We're back with our roundtable. Michael, I want to start with you. Hassan Rouhani, there are those critics who say Hassan Rouhani isn't interested really in turning Iran into a valuable member of the international community, rather as a wolf in sheep's clothing, as Bibi Netanyahu has described him. And he's basically looking to get sanctions lifted to get back to nefarious ways, including continuing to develop a bomb. Why is it that he might not be the historic figure that some see him, which is reflecting sort of a broader Iranian sentiment to return Iran to a position of regional and global greatness, as opposed to always having an asterisk next to its name as bad guy?
Well, you have to recognize that inside Iran, the president is about style, the supreme leader is about substance. That's point number one. Number two...
And we're talking about Ali Khamenei
exactly.
as the supreme leader.
Hassan Rouhani has always been the regime's Mr. Fix-It, but while he's giving this moderate air outside the country, there's every indicator inside the country that he isn't more moderate, whether it's with the capital punishment, whether it's with all sorts of politicians being under house arrest, whether it's any other aspect of the situation. He's replaced some of the Revolutionary Guard ministers in the cabinet, but he's replaced them with intelligence ministry ministers, and so that's like replacing bad with bad. So ultimately the question is he sincere about change? And even if he is sincere, and this is the important part, does he have the ability to bring the Revolutionary Guard into compliance? And if he doesn't, then that's a problem right off the bat.
That's very valid.
Yeah. I agree with a lot of what Michael said. I think the important thing is that the Supreme Leader actually has blessed this whole process, and that's why it will be implemented. The other factor is the Iranian public. No, they are not in charge of everything that the Quds Force does, but the system has to be responsive to the wishes of the Iranian people, and I've gone there now 9 times over the last almost 20 years. And to watch this society evolve in the way it has been so gratifying. This is young, well-educated people who are very attuned to Western fashions and movies and music, and they have been pushing the envelope now for years. The reason Rouhani is there is because those people came out and voted for him. And I think even the Supreme Leader understands that there is a limit to how far he can go in terms of thwarting their aspirations.
The Supreme Leader, however, he endorsed the process. He endorsed the change in tactics, not the change in policy. That's what his office said heroic flexibility meant. And so to suggest that he's all behind this process, I think, might be an exaggeration at this point.
They wouldn't have a deal. They wouldn't have a deal if not for him.
It hasn't been accepted.
I thought it was interesting that on Iranian television, they ran the president's address to this nation.
They did.
That was quite telling.
And you saw people taking selfies with the president on the TV.
And they even timed Hassan Rouhani's remarks so that they didn't overlap. With President Obama.
But then Khomeini issued his tweet in which he said, we've got to study this carefully, we've got to wait and see. Oh, come on, he is the man in charge, Barbara.
There is going to be a struggle. The Iranian political system is even more complex than ours. So this is going to be a big debate that's going to roil through Iran for years.
Is there a chance that Iran is the one who backs away from this deal ultimately and decides that it's something
I think it's very unlikely unless the P5+1 violates.
Well, ultimately, the way forward, first of all, Iran only has to have the perception that we're violating it in order to walk away, and if they get their money in December, there's going to be an incentive for that. But ultimately, the way forward for the United States, if Republicans in Congress don't like it, is to push for inspections on suspect sites as soon as possible before all that money is delivered in order to catch Iran in noncompliance or perhaps catch Iran in compliance, which then would be a good thing.
Well, it does appear that, when these talks started, that their nuclear program actually stopped, right? So it appears that they have been abiding by it so far.
That's like giving a sobriety test and demanding that someone count to 1.
Let me go to Israel. Barbara, in the Israeli political scene, you have obviously Bibi Netanyahu, Yuval Steinitz, who have been very, very strong voices against it. But when you talk to the Israeli security establishment, they seem to be much more muted about their fears about Iran. What's the Israeli security establishment thinking? Are we going to see more voices looking at this and saying, hey, look, Bibi, you're actually damaging the U.S.-Israeli relationship. You're breaking more China than you're going to get out of this. How about dialing it back?
Indeed, in the security establishment, and people will be hard-pressed to say this on the record because people in uniform that walk out ahead of their leaders are targets for demotion or dismissal. Just like in the United States or any other democracy where the civilian unit controls the military echelon, they have to remain silent. But in fact, there is a huge sigh of relief that this deal will give at least a decade of breathing space for them to focus on the inner circle, the threats that Prime Minister Netanyahu has legitimately raised Iran's support for Hezbollah and for Hamas and what's going on in Syria at their border. Israel has a lot to focus on, and while they will maintain some semblance of some type of credible military option for the record, the military establishment is very much in favor of fleshing out their force structure, improving their TTPs, their technologies, tactics, and procedures, and training, so that they can deal with very real threats right at their border.
Let me talk about that. Iran is generally a bad guy. The deal was about stopping the Iran nuclear program largely. That was the focus of it. That's what the international community signed up for. But Iran is also a very bad regional guy, supporting terrorism. There are American and foreign captives. In about a minute that we have left, what's the right? I mean, Ash Carter is going to reassure allies, Defense Secretary Carter in Israel and in the Gulf, and to talk about how best to tackle these other challenges. What's the best way, in the minute that we've got left, for the international community to tackle all of the other problems that Iran has?
I just actually wanted to make a point. I read the head of Hamas was in Saudi Arabia speaking to the king. So I think you're going to see an effort by the Saudis to buy off Hamas. And there have been rifts anyway between Iran and Hamas because of Syria. You will see the region organize itself to contain any more aggressive Iranian activities that might come from getting more resources, and the United States is going to be a big part of that too.
Watch Syria. Watch this space over the next few months. The Assad regime is shaky. If this deal, it does have some of the benefits, that I think we should follow the advice of The Economist, which strongly came out and endorsed the deal this week and said now engage Iran in legitimate diplomacy to end the conflicts in Syria, end the conflicts in Yemen. That's the space to look for.
It's been teetering for years, though, as you know.
You can't wave away Iran's ideology. We can't project our own goodwill onto them. We're going to have a massive proliferation. The flip side of containment is that if containment is pushed, then you have greater regional conflict, and I think that's where we're heading.
Barbara?
One thing, if this fierce thing gets ugly with the Netanyahu government and the U.S. administration, we have to remember there's one seat majority of Netanyahu. And right now there is a consensus with opposition leaders, but of any issue, if they can bring a no confidence vote and threaten Netanyahu's hold on government, it's the willingness and the need to preserve the solid U.S. security relationship, U.S.-Israel security.
Guys, thank you so very much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Up next, why Russian military aircraft are literally falling out of the sky. You're watching Defense News.